it's produced by the New Zealand Rugby Professional Referees. This one is all focused around foul play and farmhands. Apparently, when it loads. So the things we're going to cover tonight is going to be challenges in the air, lifting tackles, deliberate knock-ons, high tackles, dangerous charges off the ball, and then there's just a few key points at the end to kind of finish this off. The great thing about tonight is we've got lots of video clips to look through, and what I'm going to do is when we play a video clip, I'm not going to tell you what the decision was. I'm going to get you to tell me what you decide based on the clip in front of you. I'm only going to play the clip once, because as referees, we only get one clip. We don't have the beauty of a TMO sitting in a box going check, check, check. Very few of us are lucky enough to have ARs who can bail us out on a weekend if we miss something. I was lucky enough on Saturday to have an AR who saw something off the ball that I didn't see because I was following play. So I'm trying to bring it to a real level for you guys, so there's only one chance to see it, and it's kind of what decision would you make? Okay? The clue's in the title, foul play, so has foul play occurred or has it not occurred? Okay. So, challenges in the air. So we're looking, obviously, these are where two guys are competing for a high ball, kick through, box kick, whatever you want to call it. So the big thing we're looking for is it a fair challenge? But are both players in a realistic position to catch the ball? And it's that key wording, realistic position. It's not just they're looking like they want it, they're pretending and saying, I'm having a go for this ref, but there's no way I'm going to get near it. Okay? And it's making sure that they don't mistime that jump or that contact with the player. Sometimes we can have a pretty big collision in the air that is a fair contest, because both players are really competing for it. But more often than not, sometimes one player ends off badly because somebody's got it wrong, and that is the risk you take. If it's not a fair challenge, these are the kind of very, very, very broad guidelines. Okay? If a player lands safely but it's not a fair challenge, it's a penalty kick only. If the player lands dangerously on his backside or shoulder, it's a yellow card. And if it's through a reckless or deliberate action of another player, and the player lands very dangerously, for example, on the head or neck, then it's red card. Okay? There is a note there. If a player jumps into a stationary player who's waiting to catch and lands badly, it's not the stationary player's fault. It's not his fault. He's in a position to catch the ball, looking at the ball, and he's completely unaware of the player over there. So be very careful about that. If a player is jumping, he does have to take some responsibility over his actions. He can't just jump into a player and try and buy a penalty out of it. So we've got 4 clips here we're going to watch. Okay, each 4 clips have different outcomes. Okay, and what I'd like you to do is tell me what decision you'd make and why you'd make it. Okay, thinking about whether it's a fair challenge and is that player in a realistic position to catch that ball. Some of these clips have sound, some of them don't.
Maybe turn the lights off, Richard.
Somebody got... Yes, cheers, guys. So what do we think? So this is the point, guys, where if you want to get the most learning, the people who get the most learning are the guys who put their heads above the parapet, potentially to get it shot off. So we need some hands, guys. What decisions would we have?
2 years ago, I reckon we would have not penalised that, but now I think that's a penalty.
You think it's a penalty now?
And the whole idea of eyes looking at the ball. So I act in the judiciary room for a lot of these, and the judicial officers don't care that the eyes are on the ball. They care only about whether you were second to get there. So that guy is second to get there. He realistically wasn't going to have a competition with the guy who did get it. But I don't think it ended up dangerous, so I'd give it a penalty. But I think 2 or 3 years ago, we would have allowed that.
Okay, so for this clip here, this is play on.
Good.
Both players are in a realistic position to catch the ball. They're both running in, looking at the ball. They're not observing who's in front of them. They both want a really good crack at this ball. Okay? The second player in, he's not trying to take that player out. He's not coming in and stopping. This would be play on. It's a fair competition. Yeah, one guy lands a bit awkwardly, But as you can see what the referee did, he said play on. Okay? And I think that's a really good decision.
Sorry.
So then, let's just roll that one through. So then, yeah, they both landed a bit awkwardly, but no issues there for me. So, second clip. A bit more local. I think by the muscles around the room, I know which way we think we're going. What do we think there, guys? Absolutely yellow card. Second player, he'd mistimed his jump, so he's the guy who's taking the responsibility. As you can see, he realises that because he takes his eye off the ball. He's looking at the player in front of him. There's no way he can pull out because he's in the air, unless he can defy physics. So, yep, a clear yellow card. He's actually quite lucky the player landed on his back. Okay, third clip. What are we thinking with that one? Yellow card? Yellow card, but I'd say very close to a red. On the basis that he was nowhere near in a position and he completely undercut that player in the air. Again, I think he was lucky that the player landed on his back or shoulder. If that player had landed anywhere else, then he was going for a really early shower on that one. The height he comes down from as well, what I'd say would be a factor. Okay, we've got one last clip. I think that image says it all. And that's what differs it from the first clip. Look where that player's ended up. He's solidly on his head or neck. That's a red card every day of the week. And that's the difference between that and the previous clip. Okay? So the words I'll be using to a captain is very dangerous. Okay? So we'll just roll that one through. Nothing this player can do. Yeah, he's seeing stars.
It wasn't a red
point.
card. It was just a yellow.
Has anybody got any questions around that? Okay, it's one of those things where, as you can kind of see, a lot of you are kind of going, ooh, that didn't look right, okay? And a lot of it's going with our gut on these decisions. You know, that last one in particular, I certainly would have been blowing the pee out of my whistle to stop play before anything else happened, because that's going to be a red card. Clear and obvious red card. Okay, we'll move on then. So lifting tackles and clean outs. Okay, as stated on here, if you are lifting a player into a dangerous position, okay, that lift and then that turn, so the player has gone beyond that horizontal, 9 times out of 10 it should be a card. It's just dangerous play and can cause obviously serious injuries. If a player lands on their side, back or shoulder, yellow card. They land on their head or neck, it's a red card. I had one on Saturday. I didn't see it because the player had gone away and it kind of happened behind my back. I knew something had happened because of the player's reactions. But then I got a call in from David and from Adam, my 2 ARs, to say, check, Richard, something's happened, let's stop play. And we went through the process and we got a very clear picture. The player had been lifted, he'd been turned, past the 90, and then he'd landed on his shoulder. So I made the decision it was a yellow card only. So I had a coach come up to me after the game and say, referee, why wasn't it a red card? And I talked him through. I said, this happened. I was clearly told he landed on his shoulder. The directive is yellow card only. Okay, so just make sure in your mind you've got that kind of picture. What's the difference between a yellow and a red? Because in these, they happen often very quickly, and the difference can be really minimal sometimes. So you've just got to really get that picture in your head. So let's go with the first clip. What do we think for this one? We've got a lovely angle on that one from above, which we wouldn't normally get. What do we think on this one? What would we give? Yellow? Anybody different? Anybody go penalty only? Penalty only? Well, the directive is the player's obviously been lifted. His body's gone past the horizontal, and he's gone into the ground with his shoulder. It's a yellow card. He's gone past that 90. It's the lifting of the legs. Okay? It doesn't matter if the player didn't intend to do it, or if he didn't drive or drop the guy. The fact that the player's legs have gone past 90 means we are looking at a card. Just depends what colour.
So Richard, just to clarify.
Yes.
Because what I actually thought I saw there was that it being brought back down before he hit the ground, so beyond, back below the horizontal. So if that was the case, what would you do?
So if a player he's been lifted, he's been taken past, the player realises it's gone wrong and rescues him,
Yep.
you're probably going to go penalty only then. In that case, didn't manage to rescue him in time because the guy's arm, whatever, was down. So we can see a little bit more of that one. So, above, and it's only the fact that the player's put his arm down that he's really rescued himself there. Yeah, so if you think, but for the player putting his arm or hand down, he would have still landed on his head or neck, it could be still a red card. It's a really fine line, it's a really difficult, it's a great question, Marcus. But you've got to try and almost eliminate that hand. I'm going to keep it simple today though, okay, and say on that one, yellow card, his hand went down, okay, he's going to land on his shoulder, I'd have said. It wasn't like he really drove that player into the ground. He didn't intend to do that, but the legs were definitely above that, beyond that 90 degrees, and that's the trigger point. So let's go to the second one. Not that. It's that one. And that's one of the ones you've got to watch out for, clean out time on a ruck. Okay, player comes in from the side, to clean a player out and gets it wrong. What would we have given in that decision?
Red.
Who said red? You gone red?
Well, I guess we didn't see what happened on the other side of the ruck as it went down.
Excellent point. Let's roll on a bit further because that's where the referee was standing. So player's come around the side, he's cleared him out. Would you change your mind? Or still go red? You still go red? What would everybody else do? Yellow? I would go yellow as well. Again, the player's landed on his shoulder, but that is very close to a red card. I think, again, that player was potentially safe because of the bodies that were there. Kind of sort of softened the blow, I suppose, the player landed. That one is very, very close to a red card.
But he did carry on driving.
Pardon?
He did sort of carry on driving.
He did that, again, is another reason why it's close to red. Good observation.
When he realised, he just carries on.
Yep. Very, very lucky. Very lucky. Okay. Sorry, who?
Sorry, can I ask a question? Where
Yes.
does it past the horizontal bit come in now that the law doesn't say that? The law just says that if you tackle a player and you drive them, and you tackle them in a way, there's no reference to past the horizontal in the law. So where does that come from?
That's kind of one of the benchmarks you use to help you with this. It's to help you determine whether it's a lifting tackle or not, because we don't want to catch the guys who do those really good driving tackles backwards and, you know, put the guy on his back or his arse and he's gone like 3 metres that way. We want to make sure that we don't catch, because it looks like a lifting tackle, but it's got a completely different outcome. It's just a great tackle through the player, so that's where we use that kind of horizontal, I suppose, in a sense, as the benchmark for us. So we've got the last one now. Okay. What would we give there? Play on? Yeah, absolutely. Red card every day of the week. It's more like a judo throw than anything else. The way he's kind of taken the guy over his shoulder and really slung him round. That player was quite lucky that he wasn't very badly injured. So taken over the shoulder, crunch, head straight to the floor. Along with Marcus's point, his arms were kind of down, but that didn't really save the guy from getting a red card in this situation. There's just no need for that kind of tackle in our game. That's just very poor technique. Any questions about lifting tackles? Yeah.
Just the definition of a lifting tackle. We say beyond the horizontal. Is that one or both legs above the hips, or is it the head below the hips?
Well, so obviously take the horizontal here. If a guy's legs, are up here and his head's down here, then he's beyond that horizontal. So unless the player can save him, it could be a little bit, it could be by a lot. But as I say, that's one of the ones you've got to use your gut on and be sensible around it. If it's a degree off, you maybe need to manage that, obviously. But it's just, your gut will tell you whether something looks really, really wrong. And it's one of the things about getting those pictures in your head about what you would consider very dangerously wrong that's a red card, what's wrong and it's a yellow card, and what's you've just mistimed that tackle, that's a yellow, that's a penalty kick only. You've got to get those images in your head. Marcus?
I was just going to say, just on the tackle point, I think don't get hung up on it. The point is that the tipping past the horizontal is a proxy that we use to say at the point where he's gone past the horizontal, you tip him. And so, vice versa, if we decide that you haven't gone past the horizontal, then it's us effectively saying it's not a tip tackle, because if you haven't gone past the horizontal, then chances are it's going to be a clean tackle like you've said.
Yeah.
So, don't get hung up on whether it's one leg or not. It's just, I guess, a phrase we can use that says you have simply tipped the player. You brought him past the horizontal, ergo you must have tipped him.
Yeah.
And do we care if there's a second player in the tackle? So, because sometimes someone will tackle someone and then another teammate will add to it.
Interesting. At the I think it was last weekend in the France under-20 game, there was 2 players simultaneously got red carded because they both were involved in, they just literally picked the guy up and just drove him straight onto his head at a breakdown. And the referee said, you're both equally liable, you're both going for a red card. So you can have 2 players involved, yes. Sometimes it's deciding which player is more culpable. Okay, deliberate knock-on, not necessarily a knockdown. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put this in the category of foul play. I'd certainly put it in the category of cynical play. So there's a couple of things to think about. If a player is going for that 50-50 interception, I suppose. Was there a realistic chance of regathering the ball? Yes or no? And was there an opportunity for a clear line break? Yes or no? And was a probable try going to be scored? Yes or no? So if there's a realistic chance of regathering the ball, if a player's generally going with 2 hands, they probably genuinely want to crack at that ball. They think it's on. If they're going with 1, in my books, they're completely taking the risk. If they get it right, they're going to look like an absolute hero. If they get it wrong, they're going to probably get some form of sanction. Was there an opportunity for a clear line break? So obviously if they go in with 1 hand and they try and intercept that ball and they get it wrong and they're the last man, or there's a clear chance that a team's going to make some significant ground, then they're probably risking a yellow card. And was a probable try going to be scored? Well, then there's the added bonus of a penalty try going on top of their yellow card.
So Richard, just on that last point.
Yes.
For a penalty try,
Yes.
it needs to be what?
It does not need to be certain.
No.
It needs to be that there is, I think it is a probable chance.
Probable, but for what?
But for the foul play.
So therefore you need to call a knock-on foul play.
Correct.
Cool.
So we'll get to penalty try in a moment, but let's look at the first split to see what we're thinking. Sorry, it is the English Premiership. It's our favourite referee. There it is. What do we think? What would we give there? Oh, some debate on that one. I like it. Jeff, what would you give there?
I'm kind of because I held it back.
Perfect answer. He had a genuinely good chance to get that ball. He went one-handed. He had ample time to get that because of where the ball ended up, but then the player pulled him back. So we're going to call that a knock-on only. He was actually in a really good position to have a good crack at that.
You're not going to penalise the other guy for holding it back with the ball?
In this instance, Wayne decided no. So
He doesn't have a ball, so he has no rights to...
You could, I don't know, you could potentially argue it, but let's not muddy the water on this one at the moment. Let's just say that one's a knock-on only.
Wayne has made a previous mistake in law though.
I believe he has on that smudge. I just didn't want to bring that one up, you know.
Grab him when he's nowhere near the ball.
So he's,
The ball comes
if
off.
you look at
Now
this,
grounded.
he's got an easy chance of getting that, but then obviously the Northampton player just holds him back because he realises he's stuffed if he doesn't. So you could probably argue maybe a penalty there.
Can we just clarify too, so the law's obviously different for sevens here, because obviously sevens, that would just be a straight yellow. Is the law actually different or not for the 15s?
The law, there is no difference in law, there's a difference in tolerance. So in sevens there is far less tolerance for those acts of foul play. So let's just be careful around that. There's no difference in law, but there is a difference in tolerance, and that depends on the referee. So here we've got another one. Haven't quite quickly, so we'll play that one again. Bit less. Here it is. Coming up. What are we giving there? We're giving a yellow card, are we?
Potential line break.
What do you think, Marcus? What would you be giving there?
Wouldn't that just depend on the context of the game?
Here you go.
So depending on what's happened leading up to that.
There's a couple times.
Penalty only? I'd on penalty only. There's no clear overlap, no clear line break. We're not that close to the try line. Penalty only, you know, don't be such an idiot kind of thing. I certainly would, it'd be harsh to give a yellow card there. Yeah, I know. And that's what makes this offence. It's just the more cynical, to be honest. So I'll show you one more. So we're giving what there? Yellow card, absolutely. Clear overlap, he's been beaten, he's got it wrong, there's a clear line break. Okay, obviously I'd say we're not close enough to the try line yet to be thinking penalty try, but we're certainly thinking a yellow card there. If we're not thinking a yellow card, that is very, very, very cynical play. One hand, he knows if he doesn't intercept that ball, there's a potential try on there. So he's gambling, he's rolling the dice. And the last one. I think I remember watching this one. Oh, what are we giving him there? Try and a card. Penalty try, obviously. Clear overlap. He's last man. You know he's been beaten. Again, he's rolling the dice and saying, well, I'm stopping a try here. So it is, again, very cynical play. If you roll it on. Clear overlap. Bang. He's going, yeah, I'm going to get an interception here. No. Unfortunately, you know, single hand, you're rolling the dice. Two hands, you're probably having a good go for it. Okay, but if you're having a single hand out, either you're regathering and you're looking like a hero, or you're not, and you're probably going to be getting something else. Any questions about deliberate knock-ons? Perfect. Okay, high contact. Okay, so obviously we've got the stricter interpretations of the laws in the high contact and the directives that have come out from World Rugby around this. We've seen this in play for a long time now. So If it's a high tackle, we're thinking at least a penalty kick, okay? But there are some kind of little ways to help you work your way through this to decide if it needs anything more. So the worst case scenario, if it's direct contact to the head with force or dangerous follow through, we're talking a red card. Direct contact to the head with some force, yellow card. Indirect contact, which means it's hit somewhere else first, like the ball, maybe the shoulder, and then ridden up. And then might have a little bit of follow through, could be yellow card. If it's an indirect contact with minimal force, it could be a penalty. For example, you've hit somewhere and then a player might have slipped into the tackle, or the player might be going down. You might be thinking a penalty kick only. If it's accidental, if there are mitigating factors that may lower the sanction, for example, a player's tripped and you had no chance to get out of the way, something else affected what you were doing, then that's what we mean by a mitigating factor. Something that's, if it hadn't been for that mitigating factor, then he may not have high tackled that player. Okay? So direct force is straight contact to the head or neck. Okay, it's not just from the chin upwards, it's here as well. This is obviously an area we need to protect. Indirect, hit somewhere else. Force, high speed, a swinging arm. It could also mean a dangerous twist. Accidental, that's fairly self-explanatory. And reckless, should have recognised that they were going to get it wrong and should have pulled out or done something to avoid the contact. Okay. Let's look at the first one, see what we think. Here it is. What would we give there? Penalty only? Yep. He's been beaten, he's just chucked an arm out reflexively. He's hit kind of the chest area, then slipped up a bit. So you'd probably say, penalty kick, can we just keep them down, please? I think giving more than that would have been very, very harsh. What would we be giving there? Yellow card, bordering red, Maggie? Yeah, the reason it wasn't a red was that he hit the shoulder first, so it's indirect contact, and then he obviously rode up as the player was going down. Okay, obviously the player ending up spread eagled on the floor isn't a good look. Okay, but we've got to make sure we focus on that action. Okay, the player didn't look great, but we can't let that totally guide us.
Would we consider that to be with force?
Yeah, that's why it's a yellow card.
So we would.
It wasn't indirect with a little bit of force, so it might be a penalty. It was indirect with some force, because obviously he's coming in at some speed. And then he goes over the top of the player. And then the player ends face down in the dirt. Sorry, Smudge. I know I'm particularly wide. So what do we think with that one?
Yellow. Direct contact to the head, but the mitigating factor is the guy slipping into the tackle, so it comes down to a yellow.
Excellent. If the player hadn't slipped, would have been going somewhere else.
That's an interesting one, because when you're refereeing, from when you see it, you've got to come up with two decisions.
Yeah, potentially your position can affect that, definitely. So on this one, it was direct to the head with force, but the player was slipping down into it, okay? So he had little time to adjust. So if we just roll it on a little bit further, this is a good one. Okay, you can see that player's going down in that kind of hunch position, and that player to tackle him is having to kind of follow him down. So he's half committed into that tackle as that player starts to go down, so he can't change anything. He's still responsible though, because it's still high to the head with force. Okay? Oh, the beauty of the TMO, mate.
If I saw where the referee was, he would never see that.
This one's a little bit more interesting. What are we giving on that one? Red card, absolutely. I'm glad we agree on that one. Direct force to the head with a swinging arm. He follows through. He makes no attempt to pull out or stop. It's a red card. Okay, even though that second player kind of joins to drive him backwards, irrelevant. That's a very, very dangerous tackle.
Just going on that previous one, that would have been a yellow. The previous one before that.
Pardon?
The previous one before that would have been a yellow. Just
Correct. Previous one was a yellow. Here we go. Right into the jaw. Continues with the action, follows through. Swinging arm going into it. Yeah.
Did
That's
he get a red?
I think he did for that, yes. Now the next one's interesting, and I think it's going to split the room. It's that action there by the blue player on the floor. We'll watch that one again, because that's his... Player on top. So what would you give for that one?
Red.
Yellow? Who said red? Red, red, red. Now, it says it's a yellow card because it's high contact with a dangerous twisting action very close to a red. I'll be honest, if I think I'd have seen that on a Saturday, I would have awarded a red card. Because that had the potential to turn out to a very serious injury to that player. That's a broken neck, and we're talking possible paralysis. So for me, I probably respectfully disagree with that one being a yellow only. That twisting motion on that neck, if he, that's seriously dangerous, and we've been trying to stamp that out of the game now for a few years, a good 3 or 4 years now. So myself, if I'd seen that, I'd be blowing the pee out of my whistle, and that would probably have been a red card. They say it's a yellow card, close to a red. I would probably respectfully disagree with that one. I think that's very, very dangerous. I think that's probably even more dangerous than the previous one. That twisting motion on the neck. Very, very dangerous. I'm happy for anybody to disagree with me on that at the bar later, but...
We'd certainly be backing you if you issued a red card for that. We'd be going into backing you 100% on that.
Yeah. Horrible, got to get that out of the game. Those old, what used to be called alligator rolls. Okay, dangerous charges. Which player is the one that's most likely to get dangerously charged?
Ball clearance.
Player clearing the ball with a kick. Fullback, number 10. So, dangerous charges, obviously. Elements to involve, does it involve arms, or is it a shoulder charge only? Is it late, or is it off the ball? Is it high, and is it reckless? I.e., should that player have been aware that what he's going to do is going to be late, and did he have the opportunity to pull out? So you've got to consider those whilst you're doing that, and as it says, if there are at least 2 of those elements of foul play involved, then we need to be at least considering a yellow card. What do we think? Who says play on? Who says yellow card? Oh, some brave souls. Play on is that one. The guy was fully committed to that tackle the moment the ball was being kicked. Those are one of the ones where if you see that at the corner of your eye, it can look really bad. No. Perfect tackle, caught in between the shoulder and the hips. Great tackle. But it's one of those ones where I know for me as a referee, if I can see that there's going to be a clearance kick, I'm turning to watch that kicker. The kicks happen and I'm watching any players going towards him. And I'd certainly, as many of you will get the opportunity to AR this year, if you see a clearance kick's about to happen, your job's not the flight of the ball, it's to protect that kicker. And to make sure that any person going into him is not doing anything as you've turned to follow the ball. Okay? So whoever is closest to that clearance kick, just stay on that player till you know he's no longer in a position where he can still be charged late by a player. Because it's one of those ones as a referee, the kick happens, you're turning, and you go, shit, something's just happened here, it looked bad, but I didn't get a clear view because I wasn't looking at that player. Okay? So that one, yep, definitely play on. It's a good one, it's a real good hit. You see, at that moment, just before he kicks the ball, he's committed to that tackle. I've got no issues with that at all. Good wrap by the arms, around the shoulders. That's a fair contest. We don't want to get rid of those out of the game, guys. So that's why we've got to be really careful about them. Here's the next one. What are we thinking?
Yellow.
Absolutely, yellow card. He was committed, but what do you think was the factor that turned it into a yellow? No arms. He turned his body as he went into that player. There was one, I think it was 4 or 5 years back now, a Scottish player did it, and the referee only gave a yellow card to start with, and then the TMO said check, check, check. They watched the replay, and the guy had jumped, and his hip had contacted with the head of the player, and he basically laid the guy out on the floor, and the referee turned around and gave him a red card for it. Stuart Hogg, that's right. And it was a really bad one, so again, that's why we've got to watch those players who are turning in the air, because they're making no attempt then to protect that player. If he'd carried through with just a normal wrap, could potentially have been a penalty kick only. But the fact he turned it into a yellow card.
Richard,
Hello.
it's very important that we use our words correctly as to what we're calling that. So what are we calling that one?
That is a dangerous charge.
Dangerous charge, so where is the penalty? No, it's at the point. If you say a late charge, it is then where the ball lands in 15. So it's very important you get your words right. If you call it dangerous, the penalty is at that point there. If you call it late or late and dangerous, then you are 50 metres down the field.
Yeah.
So be very clear with the words.
So that one would be late and dangerous though, right?
Yes, so I'm with you. That's exactly what I'd be calling it.
Yeah.
Dangerous and late card and with penalty
We're
up 50 and 15.
We're trundling up the field. Thanks, mate. Just looks worse the more you look at it. So Brendan's obviously seen it. When you look at that one, you kind of go, what was the guy thinking? Brain explosion or what? Clear yellow card, shoulder charge, off the ball. The poor guy didn't even have the ball. Bless him. So, off the ball, dangerous. That one was a clear yellow card. I mean, that guy's probably getting up going, what did I do? Yep. Now this one does not happen from a kick. I pretty much imagine all of us would have seen this clip or seen this game. So, player coming into a ruck, okay. Does he make any attempt to bind onto a player whilst joining?
No.
No. What does he go into that ruck with?
Shoulder.
Shoulder to the head of a player. You've already got your description now when you go to your captain. I have no option because. Okay, and it gets worse. Straight to the jaw of that player. That player is very lucky not to have a broken jaw. You know, and the other factor I'd say is he can't defend himself.
So Richard, with that one you do a red card?
Absolutely. There's the second one. 2 red cards in the game for the same offence. The other factor I would put into play here is that those 2 players are on the floor. Do they have any chance to defend themselves? No, the first guy was, doing what he's allowed to do in a ruck, and he's there with his head up, no issues there. He can do very little to defend himself. That guy there is on the floor. He literally can't do anything, and that player's trundled in and dropped his shoulder onto that guy's head and neck. Clear red card, especially as it's a second offence. No question at all. You've had one, you didn't learn, go for a second. Okay, so very, very dangerous again. Well, I think the referee was trying not to completely, but yeah, again, real shocking, That's the kind of behaviour we've been trying to get out of the game. That's just thuggish behaviour. We don't need that in our game. We don't want that in our game. And that's the kind of behaviour, if you don't deal with, will cause something else in your game, because the players feel you're not dealing with it for them. So 2 clear red cards. Any questions on that one? Okay, so a few key points just to kind of sum up. When we're dealing with foul play, the biggest thing that you need to give yourself is time and space. Don't rush into a decision. Don't feel like you've got to do something immediately. So if you've noticed foul play or it's been reported to you, if you're lucky enough to have ARs at finals time or whenever, give yourself time and space. Blow your whistle. If there's something happening in front of you, stop it happening, and make sure you separate both teams. Don't leave them kind of standing together, okay? Because sometimes something can flare up very, very quickly. Happened to Gus on the weekend. He had a red card. Something as innocuous as a line out. There was nothing that went into it, but it just went bang, okay? So make sure you separate those players. You give yourself space and time, okay? And when you separated those teams, make sure you're still watching them. Put yourself in a position so you can see those 2 lines. If there's a player down or injured, you can buy yourself time by checking on them. I just tend to check if there's somebody attending to that player. If there's not, make sure that somebody does if they are injured. Okay? Now, obviously here they talk about talking to your AR. Okay? There are very few of us who are lucky enough to have ARs week in, week out. I'm one of those lucky ones. Okay? But I know you guys aren't. So if you're there by yourself and you've got a couple of touch judges, you've not got ARs, give yourself that breathing time before you come to that decision, okay? If there's captains coming and getting in your face and you're like, no, we're dealing with the injured player, away you go, please. I'll call for you when I'm ready. Give yourself that time to process through in your brain. Sometimes in a game, I'll go and talk to my AR as a tactic to give myself time and space to make the decision. Rather than rushing to a decision, I'm going to my AR and I might be talking about the weather to him. I know my decision, but I'm just slowing everything down. So you might wander across and talk to the physio, or the player, whoever's got the bucket and the sponge of water. Just giving yourself that time and space. I cannot stress that enough. You don't want to rush into a decision. The second thing is, be very clear in what you are going to say and who you are going to say it to. Okay? Now, when I talk about foul play, okay, unless it's so blatantly obvious, every man and his dog could see what was happening. For example, let's say I'm yellow carding a player for killing the ball on the try line. As the player's getting up, I could be yellow carding him in off he trots. Okay? But if it's more serious foul play, we're probably not going to do that. I've seen it done before, and I've seen it done by professional referees for a red card. They give a red card, their backs were up, and there's an all-in brawl happening behind them. Okay? So just make sure you slow things down. So I would call out the captain, and obviously you're going to call out the player who's involved in the foul play, who you're going to be carding, for example, or just giving a talking to. Now, for me, I don't talk to that player. I talk directly to the captain, because that for me is a tactic to say to this player, "Hey, I'm talking about you and your captain, who we've agreed before the game is responsible for discipline. He's going to sort you out for me. I couldn't care less about you right now. I'm talking to the captain." And I'm very clear on what I know I'm going to say to that captain. Okay? And it's come through practice. I've written scripts off and down, jotted some stuff down on a Word doc about what I would say in each scenario. And making sure my message is very clear to the captain, because I'm not there to have a discussion with him. I'm here to say, this is what's happened, this is what I'm doing about it, away you go. It's not a discussion point. Okay? Practice role play, often a good thing. Some people say practice in the mirror. That's up to you. When you arrive at a decision, make sure you've got that process in your head of what you know you're going to be saying and what you know your pictures are, and obviously how you're going to explain it. You don't want to be going to the captain and mumbling to him or stumbling over your words. There's nothing worse. You lose all credibility. So, for example, let's just say we have had a tip tackle in a game. Could I have a couple of volunteers? Nice one, Dane. Cheers, Marcus. I'm going to pick on Dane, actually, because he seems like the obvious candidate. Right, so Marcus, So Marcus is my captain, Dane's my player, okay? He's just done an outrageous tip tackle, it's going to be a red card. Okay, I'm not like the French referees, I don't walk up with my cards in my hand. Okay, I don't tend to do that, I don't like it. But say Marcus is my captain, I'll call Marcus across. Okay, Marcus?
Sir.
Not interested, thank you, Marcus. I'm talking now, you're not. Thank you. Okay, we've got here this player, we've had a clear tip tackle, he's been lifted, he's gone past the horizontal, he's driven the player into the bearing of his head. I have no option, it is a red card. Thank you very much. So that'd be great, and that'd be noted in the report on Dane there. But it's a very clear message. It's not. I'm not here for a discussion. This is what I'm saying. This is my clear thought process, and this is the action that's going to happen. Okay, and then I'm turning around. I'm going back to the mark, and then I'm blowing my secondary signals. That's it from me, guys. Any questions?
What would you do in a situation where you see something happen?
Yep.
And you're not sure whether it's a yellow card or a red card or a penalty or a yellow card?
Yep.
Where would you lean towards with the final decision?
With my final decision, what I do is almost kind of replay it in my head. What did I actually see in front of me? Hopefully I wouldn't be bouncing between penalty, yellow card and red card. I'd be umming between two of the three. Am I going PK or am I going yellow card? So I'd be replaying that in my head, putting it into the context of the game and going, has this player has he been unlucky? Has he done something very dangerous? What is my gut telling me now? And often your gut, 9 times out of 10, will be correct. If it looks really bad, it probably is really bad. If you're going 50-50, you're probably thinking it's not as clear and obvious that you'd think, and you might err on the side of caution. But as I say, go with your gut. It's the strongest thing you have, and we don't have the luxury of TMOs to play it 5 times for us on the screen in slow-mo and from 6 different angles. So, whilst these are great examples, this is not what we experience on the weekend. We've either it's ourselves or we've got another guy we're going to talk to who may have seen a different picture. So I'd go with your gut. If your gut says it's a yellow card, it's probably a yellow card. Okay? And back yourself. Don't try and talk yourself down off that ledge because you don't necessarily want to give a yellow card. Okay? Trust your gut. If you think it's yellow, it's probably yellow.
So